Hi, friends. Hello to my friends. Hello, hello, hello. I'm back. Hey, I'm back. And I woke up a little bit. And I discovered that I rolled myself a joint last night. And I didn't smoke it last night. So now I have a joint that I didn't even see it this morning. This is literally the first weed I'm going to smoke. And it's like fucking 11 o'clock. What the hell? Hi, J Rance. What the hell? Anyway, we're waiting for the Helsinki Institute to get the Helsinki in here. Move your Helsinki butts. No. First, I have something that Carla sent us, though, but I'm going to wait till some folks come in. Hello, easily distracted. How are you today? I'm going to tell you, you know how I complain all the time, so this shouldn't come as any surprise whatsoever. But can I just complain for a minute that, I mean, clearly my show's boring. I understand that. I mean, if you're not into the news or something like that, then you don't want to watch this, right? But I just, I guess for some people, YouTube is like a sport, you know, where it's like they found their little community, even the community of people they don't like, that don't like each other. And they all come back to each other like over and over again. Like they can't break out. It's like when I left my hometown after graduating high school, I said, I don't think I'm going to come back here. And I didn't. I never went back. So I feel like there's a bunch of people on YouTube that I have made acquaintance with over the years, and they just can't quit each other. They just can't fucking quit each other. The only thing they have to come back to is each other. And it was boring in the first story. So now it's like cringe and boring. It's both. So anyway, I don't know. I'm just going to keep doing my thing because this is what I've always wanted to do. So I'm just going to keep doing it despite all of my scratching of heads about how in the world does this count for entertainment today? That's what I kind of wonder. I'm not really awake, Oren, so you're in good company because I woke up late today and then I never really got caught up. And then, well, now I hope that I'm starting to get caught up. Anyway, I want to play this thing that Carla sent. I don't know what it is. I am tired. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Oh, I love you, Lee. I love you so much. Have a good time at your meeting. Blech. You're like, this could have been an email. No, probably not. Not all meetings can be emails. Have a good one, Lee. We'll be providing that ear candy for you as much as possible. All right. So I want to play this thing that Carla sent before she gets here, but then we'll figure it out. But hold on. Let me just do this. I don't know what it is, so scary. Why do these coincidences keep happening? Okay, hold on. Yep.
Let's play a game. I'm about to give you a bunch of random situations, and you can tell me how many random coincidences the world is full of. So this is Ari to Go. He patented technology on free energy. He was headed to the airport to go meet some investors, but he never made it to his flight because he was found dead in his car. That's random. This is Stefan Marinov. He is the leader of the European free energy movement. In 1997, he had a major breakthrough, and as they were working on the prototype, he was found dead. What? Yeah, apparently he fell out of a window. This is Dr. John Mullen. He is a nuclear physicist that worked for one of the largest military contractors in the world. Apparently he discovered something really big in the realm of energy, but unfortunately, before he could come out with this information, he died from arsenic poisoning. But don't worry, his girlfriend was the primary suspect. She was actually found dead in her apartment as well. They didn't go after any other suspects. Case closed. This right here is Dmitry Petronov. He invented a plasma battery that powered his 2-story house for 14 months. One day he went to go get bread from a bakery and was never seen again. Zachary Warfield was also working on a plasma battery. He actually met with Dmitri a couple of times where they would exchange notes. He mysteriously died in a boating accident in Washington, D.C. Eugene Milov was an expert physicist in cold fusion. He claimed to have a working prototype of a free energy device, but the day before he was going to go public, he was beaten to death. That's so random. Rory Johnson invented a cold fusion motor that generated over 500 horsepower. The Department of Energy took a restraining order against his technology so he could never publicize it, and you're never going to guess what happened to him. Everyone who knew him said he was super healthy, had no health issues, but he died mysteriously. Mark Tomian was awarded a patent for a zero-point energy system. After he developed his working prototype, he was found mysteriously dead, and the crazy thing is, his research is missing. What? Or you might recognize this one. This is Stan Thompson. He developed a car that ran off of water. After developing his working prototype, he went to go to lunch with 2 investors so that he could gain money to push this technology out there. He died during lunch. His last words were, "I've been poisoned." Nikola Tesla believed he could make free energy. And all of his research was funded by, guess who? J.P. Morgan, when he claimed to have figured it out and he wanted additional capital so that he could expand his inventions. J.P. Morgan shut him down. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that J.P. Morgan owned General Electric, he owned copper mines, he owned rubber mills. Anyways, the reason why the world has so much inequality, the reason why things are so expensive, it has nothing to do with the fact that we keep inventing technology that can help people, but we suppress it. Anyways, I don't know, what do you guys think? Isn't that crazy? What coincidence?
What a coincidence. I don't really, I mean, it is odd to me. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. When a couple of people from Boeing died mysteriously, or not mysteriously, but unexpectedly, or committed suicide, rather, forgive me, died by suicide. I have to, I mean, it just is odd, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. And I don't tend to actually go in, despite all appearances, I really don't go for conspiracy theories or the fact that things are connected. People die every day. So, but, it's interesting to think about how the oil companies suppressed research on green energy. I mean, that's a fact. They basically killed all the research that was into green energy back in the what 70s or something. So I do suspect that what we think happens, and people being silenced and suppressed, really does happen. But of course, I don't know about murder and things like that. I'm not sure people take it to that extreme. However, it is, there is already evidence that corporations have tried to stifle technology advances for their own uh, gain. And that should be wrong. Like, that should be fucking illegal. That should actually be illegal. I don't know how, but there should be a way to prevent people from using money to not help humanity. Some things should be outside of a corporation. Oh, that's right. That's why we invented government. So they could work on projects in the public interest without a conflict of getting a profit. Oh, that's right. Same thing with medicines. There's just no reason that my medicine. Yeah, Tom Hartman probably did write about a book about it. Yeah, I like Tom Hartman. Um, yeah, it's just it's, and I think this is going to sound dumb, so whatever. I say dumb stuff all the time, but I really get this sense, like looking from the 30,000-foot view, I get the sense that we are about to topple institutions like the military industrial complex, like the CIA, like other groups that have done covert stuff that we as a country have either not been aware of or ignored because it helped keep white people rich and in power. And I wonder what's going on with this. Come on, fellas. Oh my God. Why is this not working? All right. Anyway, uh, I do wonder if we are in an era or entering an era where revolution in ways will happen, but it may not happen with the complete takedown, right, as some would want, right? I think a lot of us agree on where we want to get to with society in some ways, in a general way, but we don't agree on how to get there, right? Like, I'm not an anarchist in the way of I want to burn it all down and start again, because I don't have confidence that people are that smart. After running organizations for years, there's just not that many smart people in the world. I'm sorry. So that's not the answer for me. I would like us to work with the raw materials that we have and make improvements agency by agency. That sounds good to me. If you ask the people who are involved in an agency or an organization how to improve it, you usually get some really good ideas. So I think there's a
On
way to
Russian
do this
energy,
without
the importance of denying Russia the ability to weaponize energy and to fund its war on Ukraine. Examine the wartime and humanitarian implications of the fragile state of Ukraine's critical energy infrastructure, and offer recommendations for U.S. and allied policy responses. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022
captions.
exposed the dangers of the European Union's over-reliance on Russian oil and gas and sparked urgent debates about its need to diversify sources of energy, decarbonize its economies, while ensuring a just transition where all communities will benefit from reliable and affordable energy. In the years since, the EU states have bolstered their energy resilience by more closely partnering with the United States and others to increase their use of liquefied natural gas and renewables. However, the goal of denying Russia vast flows of oil and gas revenue to fund its war on Ukraine remains somewhat elusive. Member states have banned several Russian energy products and invested significantly in enhancing their energy independence. However, Russia continues to take in billions of dollars in oil revenue annually. After nearly 3 years of Russia's war of aggression, the energy situation in Ukraine is dire. Ukraine's ability to produce, store, and transmit power is severely impaired, with far-reaching implications for the Ukrainian war effort and potentially disastrous consequences for the Ukrainian people. In order to defend its territory and to defeat Russia, it is imperative that Ukraine meet its significant and immediate energy needs while also defending and maintaining its energy infrastructure. To help us explore these issues, we will hear from 3 expert panelists. After brief introductions, they will have time to deliver remarks, and then we will have time for questions. Speaking first and on the geopolitics of European energy security, to include a nexus with China, is Dr. Anna Mikulska. Dr. Mikulska is a research staff member at Science and Technology Policy Institute. She has a background in political science, international relations, and law. Prior to joining STPI, she was both a fellow in energy at Rice's University's Baker Institute, where she co-led the program on energy and geopolitics in Eurasia, and a senior fellow at the Kleinman Center for Energy Policy at the University of Pennsylvania. Her focus has been on markets for and geopolitics of energy, including the use of natural gas as a economic tool and the role of U.S. exports of liquefied natural gas in the context of domestic and international energy security. Dr. Mikulska's professional interests also include the impact of electoral politics on energy policy and international systems. She holds a doctorate in policy science from the University of Houston, a master's degree in international relations from the University of Windsor in Canada, and a law degree from Adam Mickiewicz University in Poland. Dr. Mikulska speaks Polish, English, German, Farsi,
Gal
and Russian.
for sharing it.
Then we will hear from Dr. Joseph Makut on the initiatives to build out Europe's existing critical energy infrastructure and how coordination among the EU, United States, and others can help curb Russian energy exports. Dr. Makut is director of the Energy Security and Climate Change Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. In this role, Dr. Makut leads CSIS's work to understand the geopolitics of energy and climate change, to ensure a global energy transition that is both responsive to the risks of climate change and the strategic and economic priorities of the United States and the world. Dr. Makut is an expert in climate science, climate policy, and in risk and uncertainty analysis for decision-making. He is frequently cited in trade and national media on the politics of climate change and has testified before Congress on climate change and science. Before CSIS, Dr. Makut worked as the Director of Climate Policy at the Niskanen Center, where he led efforts to research and promote carbon pricing,
Cannon
low carbon
wilding out.
innovation, regulatory reform,
Sorry.
and other market reforms to speed decarbonization. Between 2014 and 2015, he worked in the U.S. Senate as a Congressional Science Fellow, supported by the American Association for the Advancement of Science and the American Geosciences Institute. He holds a PhD from Princeton University in Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences, a master's degree in applied mathematics from the Delft University of Technology, and a bachelor's degree in mathematics from Harvey Mudd College. And finally, Ms. Olga Kokova will offer insights into the current state of Ukraine's energy infrastructure and offer recommendations on how the United States and allies can partner with Ukraine to foster innovation and resilience. Ms. Kokovka is Deputy Director for European Energy Security at the Atlantic Council's Global Energy Center. Ms. Kokovka leads GEC's portfolio on advancing energy security, decarbonization, and competitiveness through cooperation between the United States and Europe. She addresses these issues through in-depth research and high-level convenings. Ms. Kokova frequently appears on the BBC,
everywhere.
Bloomberg, CNN, Deutsche Welle, NPR, and Times Radio as a guest commentator. Her work has been published in Barron's, The Economist, Foreign Policy, The New York Times, The National Journal, Politico, and The Washington Post. Before joining the Atlantic Council, Ms. Kokova was a senior program coordinator for the U.S. Energy Association's Energy Technology and Governance Program, and a program director for the Climate Plus Energy Project, a clean energy nonprofit in the Midwest. Dr. Mikulska, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Good afternoon. I'm really happy to be here and have the opportunity to revisit what I've been looking at for years now, even before Russia invaded Ukraine. That invasion and events that follow have exposed serious deficiencies in energy security of the European Union and its members. As I have testified a year and a half ago to the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources for the hearing that examined the impact of the invasion on European and global energy security, Europe failed on all aspects of energy security and security of supply as defined by its availability, accessibility, affordability, and acceptability. Those deficiencies in energy security were tied directly to EU's overdependence on Russian energy supply and Russia's willingness to use that supply to exert geopolitical pressure. Natural gas has been the most geopolitically sensitive of the fuels due to the need for extensive infrastructure to move its volumes, either via pipelines or as liquefied natural gas through import and export terminals. Russia has known it all too well and has been manipulating supplies to Europe since the winter before the invasion. Ever since, the growth in LNG trade and buildup of LNG infrastructure in Europe has helped in addressing some of the deficiencies. However, the supply still does not match the potential demand needed to avoid energy crisis anywhere in the world in case of major supply disruption or if demand increases based on weather. The supply of LNG globally has been steadily increasing with the US as a major player. This is important since the US LNG volumes are flexible in terms of destination and that's how they can help balance global markets. With no destination clause, any buyer of US LNG can send the fuel anywhere in the world. Oftentimes, the supply goes to whoever can pay the highest price. Since the Russian invasion on Ukraine, Europe has been usually the highest bidder. High prices of energy in Europe have contributed to increase in energy efficiency and strong development of renewables. However, high prices have also contributed to inflationary pressure and decrease in industrial activity and investment. The latter is particularly true for hard-to-abate sectors, such as steel, cement, and glass manufacturing, or fertilizer industry, where natural gas is used. Renewable power has been often seen as more secure in terms of supply, given that it's generated domestically. However, because of its intermittent nature, it cannot yet support the energy system in the same way that traditional energy generation or electricity generation does. In addition, there's the concern of becoming dependent on China for critical minerals and rare earth supply needed for renewable generation. Natural gas, on the other hand, is seen as a good backup for intermittent renewables as it's less emission intensive than coal and its generation is flexible. It can be switched on and off relatively quickly to assist the grid. This natural gas will continue to be an important fuel for Europe. Still, relatively large share of natural gas that Europe consumes comes from Russia. For some countries, especially Austria, Slovakia, and Hungary, Russian gas still comprises majority of natural gas flows via pipeline. Russian pipeline gas supply, especially to those countries, is likely to decrease when Ukraine-Russia transit contract concludes end of this year. This will make even more critical the supply of LNG that reaches Europe. Paradoxically, Russian LNG imports into Europe have been increasing. In fact, they are increasing at the time when all other LNG supplies are decreasing. Given high prices of natural gas, the revenues that Russia state garners from those sales are contributing to Russian economy and its ability to wage war. A recent report by EIA has notably pointed out that Russian gas production has increased 9% year on year in the first 3 quarters of 2024. Similarly, revenues from oil, from sales of oil support Russian state as Russia is able to exploit lack of universal adherence to sanctions as well as the loopholes in those sanctions. Russian oil not only flows via pipeline to some of the EU states, it also is blended into oil coming from other origins, and it's sold either directly or indirectly as refined in other products. The latter is not subject to sanctions. In the meantime, China has become Russia's main energy export destination, particularly for natural gas, which Russia is sending there via pipeline of Power of Siberia 1 and as LNG. With lack of other markets, Russia is becoming dependent on China as a demand center. Those closer ties between Russia and China could become problematic in general as well as with respect to energy flows. After all, both countries combine the powers of world's major fuel supplier and world's largest energy consumer. This creates potential for geopolitical interference. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You have the floor.
Thank you, everybody, for having us today. Pleasure to be here with my esteemed colleagues. Noting, of course, that these comments reflect my own opinions, not those of my employer. It's now well known the energy crisis, kicked off by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, reshaped global energy markets, and placed Europe on a new energy trajectory. There's 3 things I want to highlight for the group today that we've learned from that and are going to affect decision-making going forward. First, Europe managed the loss of Russian gas through a combination of LNG imports, demand reduction, and the acceleration of renewable energy. Oftentimes, we miss the latter 2 factors in that story from the United States perspective. Second, the financial and infrastructure challenges that transition brought still need resolution today. And finally, there remains to be the need for the U.S. to craft a long-term strategy to address Russia's role in global energy markets to achieve long-term, lasting support for Ukraine as well as larger geopolitical aims. A lot of my comments today are based on a report that we published earlier this year. The title, Power Plays, Europe's Response to the Energy Crisis. It's in the materials we shared, and I brought 1 copy in case anybody's hyper interested. When Russia weaponized its energy exports following the invasion of Ukraine, Europe was forced into an unprecedented test of energy resilience. The scaling here actually matters. Russian fossil fuels made up 1/5 of the EU's energy consumption and quickly dwindled to just now 5% in a matter of a couple of years. That's a really large shock to what usually are relatively stiff systems. A critical part, as we just heard, and I think is becoming more and more well-known, was that Europe's survival strategy involved ramping up natural gas imports, particularly LNG from the United States. Between 2021 and 2022, European imports of U.S. LNG doubled, rising from about 30 to 70 billion cubic meters in each year, and most of that coming from Europe. And Europe is now also the primary market for U.S. LNG exports. So the integration is quite large on either side. Buying such large quantities of LNG from global markets required European buyers to pay high prices, peaking in summer 22, but those have now settled to about double pre-crisis levels. At the same time, Europe, I think, made significant strides in renewable energy, and wind and solar projects were expanded dramatically. There were changes to permitting regimes, And that demonstrated that energy transition really can support energy security for energy importing countries. While Europe already had significant renewable generation pre-crisis, the expansion, particularly in solar, deserves note. Renewable capacity also adds up year over year as well. For the 2 years of this energy crisis, Europe added about 3% of its generation needs in solar each year. As that capacity builds, that's expected to reduce the need for gas and coal and power generation going forward. The combination of quick action on LNG imports and the expansion of renewables helped Europe weather the storm and keep the lights on, but that came at a significant cost. The rapid transition away from Russian energy imports cost Europe dearly. The fiscal outlay to shield consumers and firms from the rise in energy prices amounted to $650 billion approximately by mid-2023. Across different European countries, this spending ranged from 1% to 7% of gross domestic product. This is U.S. Department of Defense levels of spending. That's absolutely unsustainable in the long term. The costs of Europe in energy, which are still, again, twice those in the United States, were recently highlighted in Mario Draghi's report, The Future of European Competitiveness, as a threat to industrial competitiveness in Europe. And to address this, the report cited, and I think this is kind of now emerging consensus, Europe will have to invest further in additional infrastructure that will enable decarbonization and reduce energy costs by improving security. Indeed, we now see a lot of that investment happening. New natural gas infrastructure will meaningfully move European countries off of Russian imports for good. For example, the Vertical Corridor pipeline project in the southeastern part of Europe is going to link gas systems from Greece to Ukraine and will really help, particularly in the case of Moldova and Ukraine, get off Russian gas imports. Likewise, the Adriatica pipeline in southern Italy will connect points from North Africa to points beyond in Europe. And the Baltic pipeline connected Poland to Norway and was turned on, I think, very closely to the explosion of Nord Stream 2. The point is, like, a lot of that, I think, is actually happening. The infrastructure necessary to secure long-term energy supplies is being built. Likewise, as those renewables are deployed, we're going to see a need for interconnection and transmission infrastructure similar to the one we're seeing here in the United States. Europe's pursuing expanded transmission capacity with projects like the Biscay Gulf interconnection linking Spain and France, the New Connect project linking the UK and Germany. I'll note that even more than pipelines, these international connectors actually require a great deal of trust between the countries on either side because they link to the electricity system on either side, and those things seem to be in constant balance. And so the geopolitics of large-scale and electricity transition actually introduce new dependencies for Europeans that we might not, that are still being sort of probed and need to be well understood. Lastly, as Europe managed its transition away from Russian energy, Putin's cronies looked elsewhere to sell their stuff. Russian energy is not disappearing entirely from global markets. Russian liquefied natural gas still finds buyers, and the country continues to use oil exports as a source of revenue for domestic and war spending. Russia forecasts that its energy export revenues will indeed increase in 2024, despite the imposition of sanctions, import bans, and the U.S.-led oil price cap on oil exports. The latter of those, I would like to comment on briefly, designed to reduce Russian oil export revenue without spiking global prices. We now see that this price cap is leaking. Colleagues from CSIS recently wrote, and I quote, "Overall, embargoes and price caps have only had a modest impact on Russian state finances. Russia's export volumes have held up thanks to its shadow tanker fleet, and despite crackdowns and pressure on dodgy traders, it's been hard to curtail activities in dark corners of the oil market that enable Russian export. The reality is," end quote, "the reality is that demand for energy products combined with sophisticated markets means that energy will find ways into global marketplaces. More effective enforcement may help, but the U.S. needs to think strategically about how to contain Russia's influence over global energy markets while providing alternatives for energy importing countries like those in Europe. That means focusing on developing clean energy economies around the world and allowing U.S. export volumes of oil and gas to contribute to well-supplied and less volatile energy markets globally." I'm going to end my comments there.
What does that
Thank you very
last
much.
part
Look forward
mean?
to the discussion.
Thank you so much. Right. Thank you so much. And before I pass the floor, I just want to do a little point of order. After we hear Ms. Kokoka's statement, then we will have a microphone available. We invite you to think of questions and take advantage of the fact that you were in the presence of experts who think about these very important and complex things all the time. I'll take a couple questions from the floor, and then we will revert to the panel. Hopefully we'll have a very strong exchange. And with that, I pass the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invitation, and it's really an honor to be here and join this briefing. Yesterday, October 15th, was the start of the heating season in Ukraine, and possibly the beginning of the most brutal winter since the onset of the full-scale invasion. Ukraine could face a supply deficit that's equal to a third of its peak demand, following Russia's decimation of around 11 gigawatts of power. But with the right coordination and preparation across the transatlantic allies, this worst-case scenario can and must be avoided. Such actions are also essential for protecting and securing European energy security as well. Today also marks the 964th day of this horrific illegal invasion. We're coming up to 1,000 days of this assault. Putin's failure to win the war on the battlefield has evolved into this heinous strategy of making Ukraine's bustling, thriving cities unlivable. He plans to accomplish this by taking out critical energy infrastructure, electricity, water, heating, and communication services. Despite Moscow's efforts, though, Ukrainians stayed brave, resilient, and unbroken during this challenging time, of course, with help from allies, including Europe, United States, and others around the globe, and their generosity. But 25 major attacks have been recorded over the 2 years, specifically on the energy sector. This assault has progressively intensified in March. Those who have been following this, especially this summer, leaving millions of civilians without power. Blackouts ranging from a couple of hours, at the very best, to 14 to 16 hours a day. Families are raising children, managing to work, complete their work assignments, cooking, taking care of their sick and elderly, with just a couple of hours of electricity a day. Imagine that. But there's a bit of good news too. It's all not doom and gloom. Thanks to the agile and generous responses from Ukraine's allies and bravery of the energy sector workers and the leadership in Ukraine, the country is now finally getting a temporary reprieve from the loss of power. But the situation is extremely fragile. The past patterns of attacks on Ukraine's energy sector strongly suggest that Russia is stockpiling for another mass offensive to launch Ukraine into freezing darkness this winter, particularly by severing connections to the 3 remaining operational nuclear power plants and very likely intensifying attacks on some of the heating systems. Such scenarios go beyond the humanitarian disaster for Ukraine that would be expected if Russia succeeds. It's also an economic and energy security issue for Europe, but also United States. Strong, secure Europe, a strong, massive trade partner for US, that is a benefit for a transatlantic relationship, that is a benefit for United States. Ukraine's energy security is a win for US, is a win for European energy markets as well. And as my previous panelists and speakers have mentioned, rightfully so, European energy systems are deeply interconnected and they don't exist in a vacuum, and they must not be treated as in a vacuum. European integration of its energy markets with Ukraine including is part of its strength. It's what keeps European markets competitive. But that also means that we need to protect all aspects of European energy security, including Ukraine. Now, what makes this situation particularly challenging are a couple of external factors that could put further pressure and additional demand on the system. For example, cold snaps, really severe winter, potential technical issues and outages, the insufficient maintenance that did not take place, that should have taken place because Russia has destroyed so much of the infrastructure, regular maintenance could not happen. That could also exacerbate the problems. And of course, the risks of cybersecurity attacks, not just for Ukraine, but Europe and United States as well. For Ukraine, the frequency of those cybersecurity attacks have tripled since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. But again, some, serious, horrific situation, but some good news and hope. Together with allies, Ukraine can prepare for Russia's malign actions. We know what to expect. And also some of these additional external scenarios that are really hard to control, or we have absolutely no control over, in terms of the extreme weather events that are on the horizon that could impact the demand. I'm going to outline just a couple of specific opportunities because, yes, I wanted to present how dire the situation is. I also wanted to showcase how Ukraine was able to maintain its energy production, even in this horrific environment, but also being realistic about what's on the horizon. And here are a couple of suggested action items that can ensure that Ukraine survives this winter and thrives, not just this winter, but in the long term. So kind of in the first broader category, just thinking through protection of the remaining infrastructure. The most efficient way to protect the energy sector is preventing the damage in the first place. Providing Ukraine with sufficient air defense to protect remaining critical infrastructure, such as the 3 nuclear power plants and the networks that are interconnected that are near these power plants, would save billions of dollars of reconstruction, rebuilding, and other costs down the road. This is the baseline. Ukraine has also demonstrated incredible innovation in fortification and concealment of smaller scale components of the energy system, hard shell defense for smaller infrastructure, something that's not possible for the really large centralized power plants. Scaling this type of smaller protection is also really important, and with the help of allies, Ukraine can do this across multiple parts of the system. The decentralization of Ukraine's energy system is another key pillar and another pathway for Ukraine to create a resilient strategy to protect its energy sector. How so? So distributed energy systems are much more challenging to destroy for Russia or other malign players versus something that's more centralized. Advancing decentralization at scale will require public-private partnerships which can be enabled through de-risking mechanisms. DFC can play a key role, and they have played a key role in providing some of those very creative mechanisms. They have contributed significant amounts of money. But again, thinking through on how to drive additional private sector investments, showcasing and supporting specific projects to showcase that there's a way to do this, even in this challenging environment in Ukraine. There's a way to mitigate risk. To work with partners, to be creative. Ukraine is not a monolith. Certain projects closer to the front lines carry higher risks versus in some other parts. And again, protection from cybersecurity attacks, extremely important. It's vital, just as vital as kinetic defense. Allies should support Ukraine in its already very successful efforts, incredible rate of success in reinforcing what I call the cybersecurity shield, if you would. Now, talking through on how to make sure that the right deliveries get to Ukraine on time. One of the issues is funding, unfortunately. It remains key. But Ukraine's Energy Support Fund has been successfully run by the Energy Community Secretariat and has been an exceptionally effective way to garner and channel funding for meeting the most urgent needs in Ukraine's energy sector, procuring equipment as well as spare parts, technical items, different fuels needed to repair infrastructure and maintain heat supply in Ukraine. The fund has received some additional funding from Germany, from the EU, so it's really important that this fund continues to stay full, so that way, especially ahead of this winter, that there's sufficient money there to ensure that procurement can continue smoothly and it doesn't become depleted when Ukraine needs access to this money to repair, replenish, and procure the right parts for its energy system. Moreover, Ukraine and its allies achieved significant progress on expediting the right equipment deliveries to the right locations across Ukraine. Those of you, I'm sure all of you have seen Ukraine on the map. It's huge, and making sure that the right communities get the right parts that are, have unique specs is really, really important as quickly as possible. By building out relationships with communities on the front lines, especially donors in different countries or multilateral donors can better understand the unique needs of the different communities in Ukraine. For example, this combined heat and power units, getting them to the right locations as quickly as possible, making sure there's reliable backup options, including liquefied petroleum gas, LPG heaters, wood stoves, and other solutions. There has been progress made, and this has expedited how quickly deliveries come to Ukraine to the right places, but there's still room to grow. And then finally, repairing, rebuilding, and replacing equipment. So ramping up production of critical energy equipment in Europe and United States would create a much-needed strategic reserve of crucial system equipment. So thinking through it in a more holistic way, not just for Ukraine, but for all of the transatlantic energy systems. This will address a broader transatlantic strategy component shortage on our hands today that we're facing, not just in Ukraine, but in Europe, in the United States. One example, Ukrenergo, Ukraine's energy system operator, is making good progress in accumulating a stock repair equipment. So they're accumulated 3 times of what's usually needed. But these are unprecedented times. 3 times might not even be enough. So really going on the extremes and preparing for the worst. Another strategy is optimizing exports from Europe. Optimizing electricity imports from Europe, which will, of course, reduce the need and the pressure to produce more energy at home. Before the full-scale invasion, even at times during the last couple of 2 years and a half, Ukraine has securely exported power to neighboring European nations. Incredible, in the midst of the war. Now imports from Europe will play a crucial role in keeping the lights on, anticipating about 1.7 gigawatts of electricity to be imported from Europe by Ukraine in the near future. Expanding this interconnections with Europe, and especially Moldova, and securing also Moldova's energy system because of how closely it's intertwined, a very key strategy here. And I spoke a little bit about risking investments, so just kind of driving that point home. Again, finding ways to encourage private sector engagement in Ukraine. I'll give you one example. Ukraine has massive gas storage capacity, and it has been utilized by traders even during the full-scale invasion without any kind of de-risking or insurance. But Russia noticed that and attacked these facilities. To none of their success, they kept the gas flowing safe. They were able to deliver the gas. But Russia did this to discourage Europe and European traders from storing their gas in Ukraine's vast natural gas facilities into the future. But the resilience of these facilities has been clearly demonstrated, and Europe should offer, and US should offer de-risking mechanisms to encourage future traders, European private sector companies and others to store gas in Ukraine. This also has positive economic implications for Ukraine as well. And finally, just a couple of last points. The occupied territories must not be forgotten. For example, international communities must prioritize efforts to prevent a nuclear disaster in occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Multiple safety violations and near misses have been recorded to date near this plant, signaling that an incident is of high probability and it's just a matter of time. It's not if, it's when. The control of the plant must be given back to Ukraine in the best case scenario. At the very least, it must be given to someone to non-Russian forces to ensure the safety, whether it's a neutral party, but we do need to pay more attention to what's happening in Zaporizhzhia. Even if it's giving control to more of a neutral party, even if it's not, at the very worst case, non-Ukrainians operating it. With Russians operating it and occupying it, we're just watching a slow motion of a disaster on the horizon. And to finish a bit of a more positive note, look, Ukraine is in a challenging situation right now, but it must not be viewed as a victim. It should be viewed as a partner in Europe, a partner who can help Europe build a low-carbon, resilient, secure energy system. The country is a source of best practices for resilience and recovery, decentralization, and cybersecurity defense. And as Europe and US face, unique challenges at home that are of course different from what's going on in Ukraine, but seeing what's happening with the hurricanes and other threats to the energy system, even cybersecurity threats, there are a lot of similarities. We can take those skills and we can take best practices and utilize those skills. This will be extremely helpful. We're at an inflection point right now about Ukraine's energy future, and we know what the risks are. Russia has shown its true colors, its face, what it's capable of. We know what the threats are. We know exactly what to do to prevent them, to mitigate them, to make sure that Ukraine, as I mentioned earlier, can be a thriving hub for innovation, clean and low-carbon energy production, can support European energy security. But first, it must survive this winter. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to each of our panelists. There's been some reports that have additionally been mentioned in some of the comments. Those will be posted to our website with the testimonies that you've given shortly, so everyone can be able to follow along and be able to look up that additional information. We heard we're going to have a staff person here with a microphone, so if you would like to prepare your questions, someone will be right. Thank you so much. Someone will be right with you. We heard a lot about the costs and interconnectivity and the dire condition under which Ukrainians are living, but also the 2 times the energy costs that our European friends and allies are living with, and the real geopolitical crisis that Russia's full-scale invasion has precipitated, exposing all these weaknesses in Europe's over-reliance on gas and how to move to not only a more sustainable future, but certainly a one that is less invested in helping Russia to fund its war against Ukraine. With that, I pause a minute and then I'll turn it to the floor. So if anybody would like to take questions, we'll probably get 1 or 2, and then we can turn it back to our panelists for some discussion. Please. Yes, he's bringing it over. Please, I'll turn off the microphone here.
Look at this. This is great. All right, look at that. No, I feel very improvised. Yeah, I'm Paul Massaro. I'm the staff director of the Helsinki Commission. My question's for Dr. Mashkoud. Sorry about the last name. It's wrong. But you mentioned the U.S. sanctions and I guess really the coalition sanctions on Russian energy. We've tried to run these to ground on multiple occasions, trying to understand sort of what's happened here, because, certainly by the metrics, they seem to have essentially failed. If our mission was to bankrupt Russia, we haven't. But by any stretch of the imagination, we haven't. And I guess the question is the design flawed? Was it not going to happen to begin with? There's been this thinking of, well, we're trying to get Russia actually to sell as much as possible at the lowest price possible, and we're gonna. Just when I hear even myself say that, it's kind of like, really, that was our goal. So I guess you'd mentioned, I think, what has been told over and over and over again, which is we've tried to balance stability in global markets with bankrupting Russia. But it seems like we've either
I think he's missing a couple
misunderstood
of steps there.
this or wildly
he's wrong.
prioritized stability in global markets to the point that
Anyway.
Russia doesn't seem to have even taken much of a hit. If I'm wrong, I'd like to know. So thank you.
Yeah, altering oil markets is a tricky thing to do because as a commodity, oil is very fluidly, pun intended, exchanged, right? And while I think there is plenty of evidence that early on the price cap or other sanctions did have an effect on Russian oil export revenues, the industry has found ways around that. Like Russian exporters have created a shadow fleet. It's like ships that don't work through the standard insurance programs and other things. And that is going to be part of the reality. So what do we, that is the reality of how this has worked. So what do we do? One, we can work around the edges to make it work a little better, right? You could look at higher levels of insurance requirements and verification at critical shipping points, right? Turkey tried to do this, and then favoring global market stability, we said, well, maybe we can be a little bit more lax. So, like, as we look for options to kind of create additional pressure now, that's one option. I can send you a piece that we wrote that has a couple others, but the reality is, like, market demand will be met. And so when we think about what a longer term strategy is going to be, it's probably finding other suppliers or reducing global demand so that we can create additional pressure on Russian exports without causing undue economic harm elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, fluid
He's the
U.S.
staff
oil exports
director
are
at the Helsinki Commission, who's
helpful.
the host of
if
this
OPEC
hearing or
or
briefing.
Saudi Arabia decides to increase supply, that would actually, like, potentially reduce prices and cause trouble for Russia's war economy. But it really, at some point we need to have some sort of view on what we want the global supply balance to look like and how we're going to manage that over the long term.
Please do.
And if you'd kindly state your name and your affiliation before you speak. Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing your expertise today. My name is Isabella Baker. I'm with the CSCE. A few other countries have been mentioned in this discussion, Moldova particularly, Turkey more recently. I'm curious what efforts have been made or what efforts can be facilitated as to regional energy security in the Black Sea region, in Ukrainians' neighborhood.
Step to take it first, Doctor.
Well, I think there have been already efforts that are important, and that includes the LNG terminals that have started to function in Southern Europe. Right, so these ones are important for the security of supply in Southern Europe, especially the Greek terminal. I think for Moldova might be important, as I think Joseph mentioned before. For Turkey, it's a little bit more complicated. I don't think Turkey has an issue with security of supply. In fact, it's been developing a system within which it becomes almost a place where the supply ends up being delivered and then distributed. It's sort of a hub, and that includes supply from Russia. Right, so there has been a recent even announcement that potentially Botas, the Turkish state company, will start mixing its oil, have a new blend, Turkish blend, which will include up to 40% of Gazprom's of Russian. Sorry, this was gas of gas and mixed with Gazprom's gas. So that's something that Turkey has been actually in many ways using to increase its ability to be the regional gas hub and potentially profit both politically, but also one could think of geopolitical profits that Turkey could basically have being in that situation between both worlds.
This also speaks to the need for Europe and EU specifically to have a broader enforceable strategy about the future of Russia's LNG and natural gas. Right now, the gas that's not going to Europe, the reasons for reductions is Russia. Putin was the one who stopped the exports, not European sanctions or laws. Right now, there are some restrictions on being able to do transshipments for LNG, but overall, LNG and gas and piped gas can come legally into Europe. There is no enforceable date. There's no enforceable deadline for phasing those out. So if Europe and EU specifically is serious about clarity, to creating transparency, what's coming through Turkey, what's coming through Azerbaijan and other Central Asian countries to Europe, there needs to be a clear timeline to say by this date, this is how much we want to see or not see some of the pipe gas. This is what we want to see on Russian LNG. This strategy right now does not exist, which makes it more confusing for private sector investors to figure out how they can play into the European market if they don't know that there's a certain phase-out date deadline for Europe and Russian gas relationship.
What happened?
Perhaps I can use my privileged position as the moderator to ask a question or two myself. One of the conditions of being able to try to make European energy more secure and more resilient is obviously a shift away from carbon in general, or Russian gas in particular. But one of the things that you mentioned, Ms. Kakovka, is the decentralization and kind of hubs and smaller systems, making the system itself by design, infrastructurally speaking, more resilient. Where is European thinking in terms of this ability to look at building out infrastructure in that way, and also the ability to, of our European friends, if you could project to, let's say, sustain the kind of increases in prices as they have as they figure out this transition? Will the transition come in whatever form it comes quickly enough to be able to meet the public's expectations and as well as their energy security needs? Perhaps I'll start with you. Thank you.
Sure, and you've hit on something that's exactly the answer here too, is the reason for Ukraine's decentralization versus in Europe. You know, in Europe, yes, it's energy security is important aspect of decentralization, but it's decentralization in Europe broadly is driven by the need to decarbonize, whilst trying to do that competitively. While in Ukraine, it's very much driven by how do we physically, secure our energy sector. Now, I think in the future, if Europe can build out a system that's both, that's the end goal. But even in peaceful times, even in Europe, that's not in the broader European and EU, that's not being bombed every day. It is a challenging, and in the United States, it is a challenging task in peaceful times to decentralize a massive system. I've heard energy experts refer to this. This is such a great comparison of trying to build out a smaller highway road system while you're still using the main highway, and then somehow encouraging the cars to kind of veer off. And I mean, it is extremely complex, but there is a way to do it with the right strategies and the right upgrades to the grid, the right built out of the grid. But it's a lot of financing. It's a lot of money. The Draghi report was mentioned a few times, and I think we can all agree that it's the financing gap that's really a massive concern. And part of that financing is building out the energy infrastructure that's going to take us to the decentralized systems that we want to see in Ukraine and across Europe.
If I can add, I think it's actually a really great point. And one thing that Europe is doing is it's developing its renewables, which are much more decentralized or can be decentralized. The other part is SMR, so small modular nuclear reactors, right? That we're thinking about as part of the decentralizing potentially if once they get employed in Europe or otherwise. But that's something that we're trying to figure out. What I wanted to underscore is something we've talked about when I was still at the Baker Institute, and we were talking about what is energy security, right? And energy security, we were talking about how important it is to decentralize and also diversify a supply. However, what actually decarbonization does, it does the opposite. It actually puts everything into a grid, into electricity, exactly directly opposite to diversifying as the electricity reaches the demand points. Yes, there's some diversification in terms of the generation, but at the end, everything is in a system that could be attacked,
more
both
candles.
physically, but also as through cyber attacks. And that's when the decentralization might be extremely important to achieve. So once the system is attacked, it doesn't necessarily roll through different countries because, as Joseph has mentioned, those countries are, in Europe in particular, are becoming increasingly interconnected with respect to electricity.
Right. Yeah, maybe I kind of take a step back, right? Like Europe was already aiming to do a relatively rapid transition away from fossil fuel use.
Peat bog out back.
You know, like there was some
Wait a couple
kind of
hundred.
sense
never mind.
and a lot of public rhetoric right as this emergency happened. Like, well, now they're going to change all the, get rid of those unrealistic plans. No, like Europe now is the prices are
Peat bogs
incentivizing
for the future?
transition in a way that they didn't necessarily before. The tasks ahead are relatively straightforward. They're not necessarily easy, right? Building enough interconnection that you can build a high renewable system, finding a way to do storage to deal with like daily or weekly or monthly shortfalls in generation. The European Union is like slightly different from the US, where when we build electricity transmission, we want it to go east to west. They want it to go north to south because there's it's very sunny in the Mediterranean, it's very windy in the north, and those two can kind of help balance each other over a long time. Now, what can the U.S. do? The U.S. can definitely help by investing in technology and sharing the technology, the learnings that we do, whether it's small modular reactors, whether it's like digital services, demand reduction techniques. Like those are all things that are relatively shareable between developed economies. There's some role for the state in helping enable that, but it's largely the U.S. Letting our firms innovate and take their innovations abroad. The other thing we can do is make sure that we are providing adequate energy supply to the extent we can, whether that's continuing to export LNG, supply oil to global markets. There's a future role for hydrogen that the Europeans see as a big part of their energy security strategy. To the extent the U.S. is going to be a maker or a supplier of that hydrogen, we should work together to make sure whatever we're producing meets the environmental and other standards that are going to be set in Europe and are part of their energy security story.
We're going to make Earth one big bomb, aren't we? Damn it.
I don't mean to hog the mic.
No, then don't.
You said
I
the
don't
magic
like you.
words, the magic letters, which is SMRs. So I'm just wondering. I actually have two
He's probably
quick things.
perfectly
And the
nice.
first
I just
is,
don't like his attitude.
are SMRs real? Because they constantly get brought up as some kind of miracle solution, and I've never seen one. And I mean, they always just seem like fantasy technology to me.
Okay, I don't like
or
them.
else like right on the precipice, but never quite there, sort of things. And then the second thing, I guess, because we were talking about the decarbonization thing, I sort of take exception with the idea that Europe they were saying they were decarbonizing, sure. But I mean, Germany shut down its nuclear power plants. I mean, nuclear is like zero carbon technology. The idea here was to buy a huge amount of cheap Russian gas, to basically, run the system off purchasing from corrupt gas from Russia. And when that was no longer an option, they went back to coal. I mean, these aren't exactly like low carbon, fuels. So I mean, I guess it's confusing to me.
I'm not saying that
to hear like, oh, they're
factually saying
heading
there's
this
just
way,
so much
or they were
emotion
doing
in
it anyway, or something like this. But because to me, it's like actually, if they were serious about this, they would have been investing in nuclear a long time ago. When the only one that did was France, which did it not out of decarbonization reasons, but out of energy independence. Great France sort of reasons, which were different than all this other kind of stuff. So, I mean, is Germany now going to re-embrace nuclearization? Is nuclear going to come back? Or because I mean, you make that face, but I mean, are we serious about this or not? I mean, there just feels like this almost like foundational silliness to this, that we've got the Greens in government burning lignite and coal.
There's a lot there. Does someone want to start with?
I mentioned that
angry.
SMRs.
Honestly,
Go ahead.
we're
Okay.
glad you did.
Dude, we're
Please.
trying to help.
I think there is something to it, although yes, indeed the SMRs are kind of still always like one step behind of what we are hoping. I believe there is one SMR working or close to working in China. So there. Again, please do not quote me on this, but there are there is some movement, right, on the horizon, I believe. However, when it comes to the clean energy, decarbonization of energy in Europe. I think there is a lot to it, and particularly in Germany, I think there was this kind of idea, well, let's run on cheap Russian gas until we can actually really decarbonize through renewables based on some type of technological breakthrough that we're gonna have. For sure, we're gonna have, right? But until then, let's run it directly from Russia under the Baltic Sea, and get that gas in a cheap way. Exploit Russia, because Russia will depend on us. Little did they know, Russia thought the opposite, right? And Russia was able to actually call the bluff. In many ways, by cutting, as Olga has mentioned, by cutting supply to Europe. Europe has not cut supply from Russia. I mean, it's the opposite, exact opposite. So in terms of nuclear power, and I've looked at it at some point in Germany, there has been the movement against nuclear through actually Greens that's been happening in Germany since 1970s. It's much, much deeper than we can think of within the last 3-4 years or so. It's been underscored by the Chernobyl, disaster, and later on, going forward, access to gas kind of allowed Germany to think outside the box of the nuclear box, and that's kind of what the nuclear was taken out by law. In fact, Germany has extended its nuclear power plants by 4 months till April, even though it was supposed to shut it down in December, based on the energy security consideration as a backup power. Interestingly enough, which is nuclear
if you
is
haven't
not
seen
really
the
for a backup
docu-series,
ability,
or
right?
whatever,
but it
not
has
docu-series,
extended and
but
then it shut it down.
the
It's
dramatized
unclear
series
whether or not
Chernobyl, you
Germany
must
had
watch
actually
it. It's amazing.
Fuel to be able to keep those power plants alive at that point, because nuclear fuel is also not easy to come by, and most of the nuclear fuel that Germany has been buying has been from Russia. So here we have this kind of a system that is truly, relying on Russia, not only on natural gas, but also on the things that could back it up. When it comes to nuclear power, I think in Europe in general, France actually has not been investing in nuclear power. A lot of the issues that France has had over the last 3 years because of Russian invasion, it has with the working of its old nuclear reactors that they actually have now to reboot, because they weren't building new ones to sustain them, because there was this idea of renewable power and potentially natural gas supporting their system as well. Where the nuclear power could have potential impact will be places like Poland, for example, which is trying to build not one but potentially more of nuclear facilities, and with the U.S. And it's right on the border with Germany, really. So I'm not sure what Germany is gonna actually gain besides the fact that Poland will potentially be sending some of the nuclear power, hopefully once it's built, to Germany. It will take time, however.
Yeah, amongst the mysteries of the universe that one should not try to explain is German nuclear policy. But it's a large integrated market, and so look for other places that are supportive. Poland is interested in building, with U.S. support, large nuclear reactors of the kind we just finished at Vogel. That seems like it's going to go forward. There's a small SMR project that has U.S. support being destined for Romania. And then Ukraine, to the extent that it is interconnected with Europe and joining the common market, is can be a large source of nuclear power as well. They've got the workforce, they've got a security environment. Well, they had a security environment that was relatively hospitable, and so those are places where I think it's just more productive to look.
And just to add 2 sentences on SMRs, yes, real technology, but the reason why we can't just simply ignore it is because China's going to build them regardless at scale. So the question is this another race that we're willing to?
Take care, Tom. I'm going to play that video after this.
If we don't step on the gas and think through a way to do this in a way where it's all about how to do this cost competitively in a way where it's not just one-off react. Yeah, the first ones are going to be complex. there's going to be setbacks. We mentioned several countries that are moving forward in this, Czechia, Slovenia, and others, even some Baltic countries. This has been a wake-up call. So even when Germany is already reconsidering nuclear, that's serious. So it's a missed opportunity to not have a cohesive strategy on nuclear across Europe. It is a missed opportunity. However, it will be extremely important to then, once new technologies like SMRs, like 1 or 2, get built, that there is a cohesive regulatory environment that makes it easier, so you don't have to go through the hoops of like certifying, in multiple member states, and that's going to
Absolutely.
be key.
The policy is usually not the technology. Is often the issue that ends up killing some of the technologies at the end, unfortunately. And actually, part of the SMR is Russia also is developing its own SMRs, and they are close. In addition, most of the fuel that actually would fuel SMR would come from Russia. So there is a point of developing alternative SMR fuels supply centers, because we probably should not be in the same situation that Europe found itself when Russia invaded Ukraine.
Thank you. I think some of the things that I'm hearing as we're talking, there's a lot going on with policy recommendations, with realities on the ground, geopolitical and also technological, not only innovations, but complexities. I'm hearing that this war of aggression is heightening an awareness of interconnectivity, not only within Europe, but across Europe, and certainly drawing in the United States in terms of our ability to be part of the solution with innovation, with business possibilities, investments, with energy supplies. But I'm hearing also that as we work forward on this nearly 3 years in, and certainly in 2014, after the purported annexation of Crimea, we're still lacking really cohesive, longer-term strategies as the community writ large, and we're still grappling very mightily with this. And I think from the United States perspective, we do understand, and we have to understand, and I'm glad that you're here today to tell us and double down on the fact that Europe whole, free, and at peace with the lights on is in the United States' best interest. And when we can have a role in supporting that, we should, and certainly we need clarity. And I was thinking about clarity, we need clarity from the national priorities, whether we're balancing, comfort and cost. We need clarity from a perspective of how the business environment is working, whether it's how sanctions work and public-private partnerships, and how that helps and encourage innovation and engagement. I think that we have to be clear about Russia's aims, and Russia's not pulling any punches when it says that it wants to dismantle Ukraine. So we have to be very clear, because they're clear, and they're letting us know. And I think also it would be remiss if I didn't bring it back to the clarity of the righteousness of the Ukrainian position of self-defense, and to try not to be completely dismantled and taken over by its neighbor. And it is fighting right now, not only for its existence, but also trying to also, again, you said partnership with Europe and allies, and we need to energy security. It comes to the root of some of this geopolitical fundamental questions about how we live and work and exist together in a community of nations that respects rule of law and wants to do business and wants to innovate and wants to look forward to the future. So on those couple of points of clarity, I offer it perhaps back to, maybe we'll go in reverse order. Can I offer the floor back to you for final thoughts and reflections before we close today?
Final point, we need to get off our back foot and be constantly on offense. Starting from COVID, starting from multitudes of Russians invasions, not just in Ukraine, but Chechnya.
Name the
invasions and takeover of territories in Moldova, Georgia. We have been on our back foot. We have been reacting, responding to threats from malign players such as Russia, in cases sometimes China, responding to global events such as COVID, which was really extremely impossible to predict. So we need to look ahead and ask ourselves, how do we develop a proactive strategy? And instead of letting people like Putin drive the energy security policy in Europe, for the United States, for Ukraine, how do we drive a vision that we want? We have the tools, we have the capabilities, we have the innovations, we have the resources.
What tools?
The question is, do we have the political will?
Please be more specific. I hate those kinds of statements. I really appreciate how smart these people are.
Thank you for having us today. I think I'll just remind everyone that the sort of the transition we saw in Europe was multifaceted. I think that's just important to remember. There's things we can learn from it in terms of the speed of permitting, allowing both necessary infrastructure to be built really quickly, but over a long time to reduce costs, and it's important to remember that the U.S. now plays this sort of vital global energy security role that was super helpful in the case of Europe, and we don't really know what crisis lies around the corner, but maintaining our ability to do that was clearly helpful in this case, and I think will be in the future as well.
I think for me, the whole lesson from what we went through since the world has gone through, since the invasion of Russia on Ukraine, is that energy security is important. It's important for everybody. It's important also for Western Europe, which oftentimes before seemed to forget about it. We've often been taking for granted that we can actually switch a switch and the lights will go on. This is not the reality of many people in Ukraine, but also other places in the world where it's just not enough energy for people to access. And they value any energy independent of the source in the absence of it. And I think that the fact that we are talking about energy security is important because it will help us to understand not only the realities of the developed world, but also the developing world, which may make or break our energy transition. If there is not energy security for people of India, of Southeast Asia and other places, Africa or so on, we will not be able to expand our transition to different fuels and to cleaner energy and so on. And maybe that's a lesson that the developed world can take, that energy security is important, doesn't matter how well developed you are, and energy access is vital for everybody in the world. Thank you.
Well, I can't think of a better note to end it on. Yeah. Thank you so much for reminding us that we're in the driver's seat.
The big
we have to lead, and no, I'm kidding. Honestly, these issues are vital. It's been a pleasure having you here today.
I love these people so much.
Thank you so much for your time and testimonies, and this meeting is closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I love those things. They're so smart. I do have another thing. Hold on. Don't leave me. That was really interesting. I'm going to have to actually, I'm going to have to totally figure out, I'm going to have to watch that again. Because that to me was very interesting about the fact that Russia has been, their energy, either production or profits. I can't recall. I'll have to listen to it again. But basically was up, which, was not unsurprising. But what was surprising was all the people who are making sure, who really kind of like went, oh yeah, sanctions. Okay, bye. We'll do what we want. We do what we want. So that's kind of like, that was like curious to me. And it did strike me about the first guy's question, even though he was annoying. His question was an interesting one in terms of, well, what is the strategy? Is it to just make him sell his gas really cheap? That kind of thing. Is that the strategy? And how is that going? How's that going? And maybe it's going well. And that might be an okay answer if there were information to follow it up. I think the people on the panel were amazing, and I really appreciate their expertise. So I definitely want to say that. I just also am looking for those types of details about this situation, like what is U.S. policy in regards to energy, and what are the platitudes, or what are the things being said, and then what are the things that have been done in the last 2.5 years? Because now we've got a body of data to work with. So I don't know if there's independent organizations out there that are looking into that. I'm sure there are. If anyone knows of one, just, tag me on Twitter or something. And I'd be interested in hearing more about what the analysis of energy policy and intertwined with geopolitics between Europe, the European Union, all that kind of stuff, Greece, all that kind of stuff, all of it, the Baltics, all very interesting to me. And I was really waiting for someone to talk about what about the countries in Africa and how are they and potentially could they be impacted, positively, I doubt, or negatively by this entire situation. What do we know? What do we know? That's what I'm always asking is what do we know? Oh, so let me tell you actually, that's Corinne Clifford, who is an IP2, which is a really trash part of the internet. She's an IP2, used to live in a content house with a bunch of bros and get real drunk and do stupid stuff. And then she wrote a song about her vagina. And she's a horrid, horrid person. She hooked up with the Free Dumb movement when I really started watching her back in 2022. So she has, kind of like, she'll basically follow anything, anywhere, anytime. And she's disgusting. She's a sellout. She's a fake Christian. She's all the things. She's just bleh. Ugh. Bleh. She's so dumb. So I took her head from a screenshot that I just took of her the other day because she also, through happenstance, is the one of the MCs for the guy who just got caught with guns by Sheriff Chad Bianco, who had to eat his foot yesterday and admit that he didn't know that Vem was with them. So Vem Miller, who was with them basically, and Ivan Raikling got real mad at Chad and said, "Chad, you better worry about your safety." And Chad said, "Oh, sorry, my mistake." And then now Ivan is on the track of his deputy and doxing him and trying to get him, probably in big trouble with whatever vigilantes are going on down there. Because there's a fuck ton of militia light down there. And yes, she came from an affluent family. She kind of just wasted all her, whatever money she had access to. She's just been a gross kind of gutter liquid type of internet personality. But now she happens to work on America Happens Network. Ooh. And this is where I clipped that from because I watch her sometimes because she had someone on yesterday. She was talking about election integrity. Bullshit. And so she's like the face of this stupid ass network that the guy who just got caught with guns down in Coachella, because I guess Blackpink wasn't appearing. No. I love Blackpink, by the way. I was just trying to think of the first Coachella act that came to mind. So anyway, yeah, Vem Miller. So that's why I cut off Corinne's head from the screenshot and put it on the rock that is being held by the Kraken. So the Kraken technically is probably resting her head on the rock. This is kind of an action shot. Notice Sidney Powell's been pushed to the side in her boots that are made for talking. And then above the Kraken's head, very tiny, is a very tiny Corey Lewandowski. He's a new addition. He's the new kid on the block, if you will. And then above him, half face there, is Cleta Mitchell, attorney to the farts, who hopefully will catch some kind of case one of these days because she's a piece of shit. Oh, and there's her bestie's husband, Clarence Thomas, because it does look like that, doesn't it? I didn't do that on purpose. I do love Blackpink. This is badass. That's Clarence Thomas laughing about something inappropriate. And then above that is, of course, my good old friend Doug Frank and me looking a little rough around the edges, but who gives a shit? So that's that. But now I have one more little video clip that Tom sent us in regards to the SMR, I think, right? I think this is about the SMR thing that douche whistle, the guy that is the diehard light guy, the diehard light guy that kind of like fell out a window. Conspiracy theory? I think not. All right, anyway, let me see. Let me show you let me show you what I got. All right, I'm going to play this. Whoops. It's only a minute and whatever. Oops, it might be less if I do it wrong.
Google, speaking of, is the latest tech giant to go nuclear to meet power needs for data centers and AI, striking a deal with a nuclear power startup. Let's get to Pippa Stevens with more on how big tech is breathing new life into the sector. Who would have thought nuclear is back? Pippa.
Hey, Sarah. Well, Google's announcement with Kairos Power is a new chapter for tech partnering with nuclear because it's the first time a hyperscaler is directly backing a new power plant, this one with small modular reactors. It comes as big tech companies race to secure the insatiable power needs of AI without compromising their net zero goals. Google's deal is just the latest example. We also had Microsoft teaming up with Constellation Energy to bring 3 Mile Island back online, while Amazon bought a data center from Talon Energy that's powered by the Susquehanna nuclear power plant. Now, prominent tech players are also backing nuclear. Both Bill Gates and Sam Altman are chairman of nuclear companies. Jeff Bezos has funded a fusion company, and NVIDIA's Jensen Huang has called nuclear a, quote, integral part of the AI future. Now, nobody wants to take first-of-a-kind risk around new tech, and so the industry hopes that Google funding several SMRs from Kairos will send an important signal about demand and lead
Kairos
to more
from?
build-out.
What'd you say, Jim? Did you say that? Are you the one who said that? Oh, Jesus Christ. There we go. I want my thing back. Wow. They did ship-to-ship transfers in the Aegean Sea and Orin adds in some pretty crappy vessels. I had no idea. Sorry about the audios, Max. That was a lot louder. I didn't, but let me go to it. Hold on to what's going on. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be retweeting something from Teresa again about abortion access. Actually, no, I linked it earlier in the chat, so if you want to take a look at that. But let me go to my Twitter and go into my Twitter. Where is the taggy wag? Doodly doo. Womp womp. Oh, here. Wait. Bip, bop, boop, bip, bip, bip. Wait, which one is it? I'm so sorry. Wait, the TikTok. Hold on. Wait. Oh, God. I don't know how to work Twitter. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know how to work Twitter. Which TikTok was it? I'm so sorry. Is this the... No. Wham. Oh, wait. Okay, I got it. I'm so sorry. Yikes. I'm so dumb. All right, hold on. Here we go. Let me do this. Has a mild stroke. Oh, no. I learned about it from Jake. He's been at least a week. Okay, hold on. Let me see this. There we go. Here we go.
So it is nice to have a real meeting. I'm not sure why the last meeting was canceled. I was told that you were telling people that it was because I was going to bring violence. I mean, I don't have a history of that. I was planning on coming and disrupting, because it was a fake meeting and I'm allowed to do that. But I've never been a violent person, and despite what people like to say, I don't have a history of violence or a criminal record. So I wanted to clarify that. So the elephant in the room that nobody seems to want to talk about is Tina Peters, sentenced to prison for 9 years for election interference crimes. The Mesa pattern of fraud. Patrick, how many times did you use the Mesa pattern of fraud as the basis for getting rid of our election systems? How many times did all these people quote the Mesa pattern of fraud, Mesa pattern of fraud? How many text messages do you have between you and Tina Peters? How many does Laura Hobbs or Patty Plum have between Tina Peters? Because I know you guys are all connected. It's all the same information. Douglas Frank, the dude you brought, spoke at her hearing. You know, there's just so many connections here. So what I hope happened to Tina Peters trickles down here too, to these public officials, including Patty Plum, who are using their political power to undermine our elections. And you know what happened to Tina Peters by a jury of her peers. And you guys did all that same stuff, same behavior. So I really am kind of getting annoyed by the fact that they're all trying to pretend that didn't exist because our county was thrown into turmoil because of all this Mesa pattern of fraud garbage. And then look what happened to the person who basically started it. 9 years in prison. A local level politician. Yeah. So you guys should probably think about that because you're not safe. You're not safe. So, yeah, Patrick, I watched the interview you did where you spoke to some Dutch publication, and you're surrounded by all your little guns saying that if they cheat Trump out of the election, something bad's going to happen. You're obviously threatening people. You're obviously laying the groundwork to say there was fraud because you know Trump's going to lose. Trump knows he's going to lose. You all know he's going to lose. That's why you're so adamant about trying to say there's going to be fraud. Because no matter what, you're going to say there's fraud. See right through it. So I just want to let you know that if he does lose and you do try to bring violence to the streets or, you know, do anything violent to anybody, that you will be met with a very strong resistance. You're not just going to run roughshod over people because you lost again. Okay. Speaking of losing, lastly, I want to congratulate Laura Hobbs on her 4th loss over the election.
Shasta
She
County.
lost the election, then she lost her lawsuit, then she lost her appeal, then she lost her motion to vacate the dismissal of the appeal. So 4-time loser.
Oh my God. I love him. I love him. I'm going to make sure. TikTok is so weird. It always like plays automatically. He brought the fire. Okay, first of all, Kathi, if you can get a message to him, obviously he won't care, but it's okay. Tell him we absolutely adore him at the lounge. I will follow him on TikTok and I will definitely share his content. And I'm going to tell you right now, I have an extra. Remember when I mistakenly bought 2 rideable dinosaur suits? Okay. I have an extra rideable dinosaur. So it's like half body, you know, you just put it on and it I will send that motherfucker up to him on my own dime. I will send that motherfucker to him with best respect from Lolo's Lounge and the loungers. So I have a Discord too. That's great, Kathi. Let him know we totally support. And that's a tough county up there. I'd like to learn more because it's actually one of my favorite places on the earth, frankly. I have some really, really beautiful memories of Shasta County. So it always breaks my heart to see what happens. But I will fucking send him that. It's in the package, unopened, new, from Amazon. I am happy to send it to him with all the wishes of good health for fighting the good fight and being so very eloquent. Oh my gosh, I feel like he's a kindred spirit to our lounge, isn't he? So yeah, just let me know. I mean, actually, he might just be like, yeah, okay, that's nuts. or maybe not. I don't know. I'll even include a Lolo's Lounge sticker. I have stickers. I have stickers somewhere. I have the traditional Lolo's Lounge, which actually, again, is probably not really important, but that's okay. That's the only swag I have, unfortunately. Wow, that's so great. Well, see, what a great way to end that session. I am so fascinated by the energy situation in this world and what we're on the precipice of. I am so impressed with all the knowledge that people have, and everything is always more complex uh, than it appears, right? Everything is always 10 more steps of complex. So that's why, like I don't know. I'm just excited. I'm excited to learn about something else that's really impacting all of our lives, which is energy security, energy policy, energy weaponry, you know, and energy development, right? And this whole nuclear thing and we gotta, yeah. Hey, man, I dig Shasta County so fucking much. Like, it is, Kathi, it is literally one of my favorite places on earth. Like, I would stack that up against some of the best Scottish Highlands and just like total. I just dig it. I dig the whole thing. And when I was a kid, it was much more woo woo and less MAGA. But yeah, I know. I want to watch more. I'll definitely follow him. I'll include his link too to that video. Kathi, who sent it to me? I'm so stupid. Or Oren. I'm the dumbest. Anyway, I will include all the links in the description so that more people can access it. Yeah, every California, where every other state sends the woo woo. It used to be great woo woo. Remember when it was great? Oh my God, we need to go camping up there and glamping. But it's so beautiful. God, it's just so beautiful. It's stunning. There's so many stunning places. Actually, I tend to think a lot of places are stunning, but this one really has always sat with me as a very magical place. Let me put it that way. Just magical. And just from the nature standpoint, not from anything else, not from the weed. I don't even think I was smoking weed at that point. I was drinking, but I wasn't smoking weed. Anyway, Lemurians. Yes. What are Lemurians? Lemurs? Lemurs? I'll have to tell you a lemurs. Yeah, glamping we can figure that out. I do love lemurs. They're very cute. Okay. Well, thank you for coming to this second session of Lolo today. Appreciate it very much. I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. Is it still Wednesday? Fuck, man. It feels like it's been Wednesday for like a week. Can I just say that? Yeah, Hare Krishnas were fun. Hollow Earthers. Sorry. I will see you tomorrow morning at 6:30 on time for Wake and Bake. And hope you have a really great rest of your Wednesday. Enjoy it. Rest up. Take a minute. Take care of yourself first. Put on your own mask before assisting others. Okay? Can you do that, please? Please and thank you. It's okay to take care of yourself, and it's certainly okay. Self-pity is just fine. Please. I need a Wednesday indulgence. Seems those two words seem to go together. Okay. All right. I really am out of here. Okay. You guys are really great. I got to move this up because if I don't, it's going to be really crazy. Okay, here we go. Okay, really, for reals, bye.